Well, my name is Sister Kathleen Spencer, and I'm a school sister of Notre Dame.
Wow,
Isn't that something?
that is something.
And we were founded over 100 years ago in Germany, and the reason we were founded was to educate women and girls because they were not being educated.
Okay,
And that's been our heart ever since.
okay. So you love teaching?
Oh, I love teaching. I was in teaching. You want to know where I taught? No, well, anyhow,
Yeah.
I taught all the grades from first all the way up to high school, and then I also after that I went into diocesan work, and I was director of social concerns in the New Ulm diocese for many years, and worked with Bishop Lucker in lived in community with Bishop Lucker also, and then from there I went to Mary Knoll St. New York State University, and that's where I got my master's in the theology of social justice. After I got back from Mary Knoll, and I had taken this course, and it was on liberation theology. And what that means is that you wait, you don't just go in someplace, but you wait to be invited in. And you don't go in and say, this is what you need to do, this is the program you need to have. But you wait for the people. You ask questions, and the people themselves say what they want, and then you support them. And so what I did was then is I just started to walk the streets on West 7th Street, kind of where I was. And wouldn't you know, I went to Dorothy Day Center that was over there at that time. And who coming out was a young woman. And I said hello to her, and her name was Patty Deese. And Patty Deese at that time was one of the founders of Listening House. And so we talked about it, and I walked over to Listening House, which was on St. Peter Street, with her. And we talked about it and said, and she kind of went, why don't you come here? Invited me there. And at the same time, I was invited by our sisters to go to McDonough Public Housing. They were looking for a pastoral minister, and they wanted somebody for some time who would maybe start a new ministry. And so I went there also. So I was going both places. I was going to Listening House and to McDonough Public Housing.
Wow.
So that's how I waited to be invited into both of those places.
Okay.
Okay.
How long had Patty been running Listening House before she invited you to join?
She was the priest. There was a priest that started that,
Okay.
and it was just for listening. It was over on St. Peter Street.
Okay.
And she was there, I would say, maybe a couple months with him, and then she took over.
Okay.
So she wasn't, I would say maybe about a year or so before. She was at that time Good Shepherd's sister.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What was Listening House like back then?
Listening House was one big room on office right on St. Peter Street. And it was maybe just the door and windows in the front, and everybody smoked. And it was just god awful. I mean, really, I'd go out, I'd come home, and everybody said, you know, the other sisters that I lived with, oh, Kathleen. I said, I know, I can't take it. It's really very hard. And at that time, as I was getting to know Patty, she was leaving the community, and I was living with another sister, but we did have an extra room where we were living. And we were living in an area where working class are, because we didn't want to have one of these palatial type places that convents used to have. So we invited Patty to live with us, and she did. So she lived with us, and I got to know her very, very well.
Okay.
And one of the things that she wanted me to really continue at Listening House, and I decided to just go in there and listen where people there was nothing really to do. I did cut hair and wash hair and stuff like that, you know, the different people, but there wasn't anything planned to go ahead and how to get the people out of this situation. So I told her that I was going to leave Listening House and I was going to go to McDonough Public Housing.
Okay.
And that's where the whole thing started with the school, more multicultural school that I was a part of founding with the people.
Okay. So the mission of Listening House was very simple then?
Simple at that time, very simple.
Listen.
Yes, just
Okay.
to really listen.
Okay.
So it was, like I said, almost impossible. But I stayed there, for hours in
Yeah.
that smoke.
How many people were there at one time?
Oh, it used to get really, really crowded. I mean, it was all the way around. Sometimes, like 30 people, and we tried to send them other places, to Dorothy Day and places like that. But no, it was very, very limited in what we did with the people at
Okay.
that time. But it's interesting because some of the people found out where I was and where I worked, and they came out there, and that got me a little nervous.
At McDonough.
Yes, at McDonough.
How long did you work for McDonough Public Housing?
I didn't that long because I would say for just a couple of years, and in that time I was looking and waiting for people. Well, anyhow, people started coming to me. I kept walking the streets of McDonough, and I met the different people that came to see me, and they would come over and visit, and pretty soon somebody said to me, "Sister, we want to form a group." I said, "And we want you to be a part of the group." I said, "Oh, great. What kind of a group?" They said, "A bitch group." And I said, "Well, I just love it." So I joined them, and that's what it was. But what I did was ask questions and kept asking questions. And pretty soon they would say, "We're tired of this. We want to get employment." They were all on welfare and needing employment. So they said they wanted employment. So I worked with them to get jobs, and then we became an employment support group because they were used to, with things didn't go right, just walk out. And instead, we supported each other through those jobs, and then from there they started looking around. And they said, "We want to form an organization." "Oh, great! And what do you think?" "And we want to call it more. McDonough Organization with Respect and Equality for People, because we want more jobs, more money, more self-respect."
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so
cool.
wasn't that cool? And so then the other thing was, then of course we outgrew I could have pictures to show you pictures where there's like 100 people outside of this apartment
Wow.
area, coming in, and I don't know, the people that I knew would bring furniture and clothing, and we were giving that. I was called the crazy nun because all this stuff was happening. And then there was a house for sale across the street from McDonough. And so I thought, oh boy, so thought we would buy it. But of course then all the neighborhood, because it was on McDonough, it was on, I forgot the name of the street there that's on, but I'll think of it later on. But so the people got up in arms, and what they did was, they protested this coming over, and this crazy nun coming with all this stuff that she does. So, but we got the house, and that was something. And of course we outgrew the house, and then we needed to have an addition put on the house. And so I went to Buildings and Trades. And I just have to tell you a cute little story, and then I'll get off this. But anyhow, went to Buildings and Trades, and I went down to see the person who was the head of the Carpenters Union. And then he said to me, "Sister, what kind of sister are you?" And I said, "I'm a school sister of Notre Dame." And he said, "My mother went to Good Counsel. That's our mother house." And I said, "Thank you, Jesus." And then from there, I went out to see the carpenters, and there were about over 100 in this place where we were, and they were smoking and swearing. And so I said to them, "How many of you were taught by nuns?" And over half of them raised their hands. And I said, "I heard you swearing, I heard you swearing, and I heard you swearing. Now do I have a deal for you?" And so what I did, there were over 226 labor people that came to our place and put up a 3-story addition, free.
Oh.
Got all the materials and everything. Can you imagine?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. So it was, and that place is going strong yet today.
Okay.
Isn't that good?
Still in the same building?
Yeah, oh yes.
Okay.
It's a house turned into a school, yeah.
Okay. How did you help people find employment at Notre?
Well, we would look with them in there, we had volunteers that would come in, and the volunteers would help too. They would look for places where they were looking for jobs, and then the volunteers themselves would take them, to the place to do the interviewing.
Okay.
But we would take them right out what they were able to do, like cleaning. Most of them did like cleaning types of things.
Okay.
And some had other, like caretaking people and that sort of thing.
Okay. Were there temp agencies back in that day? Like, are you familiar with a temp agency?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There were, but at that time we didn't kind of use them.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just right away. It just came on so quickly, and we had to get the people out kind of fast. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you? What made you come back to Listening House? And when did you come back?
You mean here,
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
Well, it was. I would say after I left Moore, I went into going into it was a program started by the St. Joseph Sisters that went into care for people who were poor and not homeless, but poor and couldn't take care of their own things. So we would go in and clean for them. And so I joined that group, and I had 2 people a day that I would spend a couple hours with and clean and scrub their floors and do that kind of thing. And then also just kind of talk with them. And then it got to the point where, of course, they died, and then I only had 2 of them. And I still only have 2 right now. And I had them on Tuesday where I go and scrub and clean their houses and things like that. And then in between, I went to the Dorothy Day Center and it was helping with various things. But then I went again after there were just, I didn't have too many, as I said, only 2 people. So I went again to ask if I could help or volunteer, and I would give out food. And I said, but I want to be in touch with the people. And so then I thought to myself, and then I found out about you at Listening House here. And so then I came, and you are the very first person I talked to.
Really?
Yeah. I asked you because I wanted to volunteer here.
Yeah.
And I said I wanted to be with the people, and you gave me Sarah's number to call her. And so I did. And as soon as I came here, I knew this is where I wanted to be. So it was like, once again, it's kind of being with the people. And the most important thing to me is, and I think you talked about this before, if there's anything that I specifically has gotten a hold of me here, and that is the number of women that are coming.
Okay.
And the women, and some of these women, the education that they have is outstanding. I mean, some are really, really very, very smart. And again, that's the thing that we as a community have always been, to encourage and with the women. And
The
so,
Sisters of Notre Dame?
yes, right. And anyhow, there was another thing at Listening House, in the first Listening House, and I was with somebody, and one day this guy came in, and almost like, I don't know how many hours he had to talk to me. He wanted to tell me he told me his whole life story, every single thing. And I talked to him, I prayed with him, I just told him what wonderful person he was. 2 days later, I heard he had committed suicide. And that kind of thing was something that, and he was mentally ill, was really disheartening.
It's not an easy thing to
No.
to move past. How would you say Listening House compares today to how it did?
Oh my, just entirely different. It's right here at this place, you have a staff, and you have a staff that, and when people need help and they need to get a job, they need to have mental assistance or anything like that, you're able to help them get to the different places, that they need to get to. And I think that is wonderful. And then you have a clothing room, you're able to give food, you're able to, to take care of the needs right at the present time, but you're also able to help them to move on from here to someplace else. And that's a tremendous thing.
Are there any recent experiences you've had with guests that stand out in your memory? Good experiences or bad?
Well, you want me to talk about you?
Sure.
The thing is, I think I told you about that one, at Listening House that went and committed suicide.
Yeah.
And the experience of talking with the women, of finding out their history. And of course, oftentimes, one of the things I never do is ever ask them, how did you get here? I usually just come and say, how are you doing? How are you today? Good. And then we start talking about something. And I'll try to think of something that's outside of what we're talking about, or even say something like, where did you stay last night? I find out a lot by asking that question. And I find out who's sleeping outside and who isn't sleeping outside. And what else did you ask me? I kind of lost it.
Any memorable recent experiences with guests?
I think that's kind of about it. Oh, there's one woman that you go to say hello. I don't talk to anyone. I said, I don't either. So I walked away. She started to laugh at me now, and I come to her and I go up to her and I say, I'm not talking to you. She said, I'm not. So it's interesting how you can break that down, and I think it's very important to have a good sense of humor.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. You know that, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, on the note of what's important or not, what would you say to volunteers who are looking to maybe get involved for the first time in social services?
Well, that this is, if you are a person that loves people and has a good sense of humor and is compassionate, this could be the place for you. And it's a place where you could grow. And by that, you could, you're starting to say, okay, you want to meet these people, meet the people who are here. And in meeting the people, you're really enjoying them. But pretty soon you're asking the question, where are you going to go from here? And so I think that anybody who first has an interest like that should really pursue it.